Search and rescue operations continue as strong aftershocks hit villages in central Italy already devastated by Wednesday's earthquake. In Zimbabwe, police violently cracked down on opposition protesters. And immigrants help immigrants adapt to a new life in a new country. Africa 54 starts right now. Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent Makori. This is Africa 54. Now, hopes of finding more survivors from Italy's powerful earthquake faded on Friday, with the death toll rising to 268 and the rescue operation in some of the stricken areas called off. Sniffer dogs and emergency crews continued to scour the town of Amatrice, which was leveled in the disaster, but there was no sign of life beneath the debris. Further complicating the situation, two strong aftershocks hit the town of Amatrice in central Italy Friday. The aftershocks, one registering magnitude 4.3 and the other 4.7, caused more damage to buildings and sent up plumes of smoke, instilling panic in the town. Since the original earthquake hit Amatrice early Wednesday morning, the city has seen more than 500 additional aftershocks, most of which were relatively mild. Meanwhile, civil protection officials have revised the death toll from Wednesday's 6.2 magnitude earthquake to 267, mainly in the hardest hit towns of Amatrice, Racqueta and Accumoli, which are largely ruined. Several hundred people received treatment for injuries. Rescue workers still hold out hope of finding survivors.
There is still hope to find survivors under the rubble, even in these hours. We saw that in the earthquake in L'Aquila in 2009, people were extracted alive from the rubble after 72 hours. Of course, it will be very unlikely.
But for those who survived, the prospects can be grim as well. For 76-year-old Amatrice resident Roberto Palaferi, who lost his home, the choices are few.
I have no idea what I'm going to do now because I had restructured the house 2 years ago. It was all new, and now I don't know what to do. I'm 76 and don't know if I can rebuild it.
Of those killed, at least 12 were foreigners traveling in Italy. 3 of the foreign victims came from Britain, 6 from Romania, and 1 each from Spain, Canada, and El Salvador. Authorities said they expected to confirm more deaths as the search operation continues. So far, more than 200 people have been pulled alive from mounds of rubble. Rescue crews, aided by sniffer dogs, have been digging through crumbled homes looking for more survivors. Well, for the latest on the search and rescue operations in Italy, journalist Giovanni Sorrentino joins me live via Skype from Rome. Good evening, Giovanni.
Good evening.
Now, it's always sad to hear that rescue operations are being suspended. Can you help us understand why this has been suspended in some areas?
Well, actually, rescue operations are never suspended. It is true that some of the streets to access the towns struck by the earthquake are still blocked, so that it's complicated for heavy lifting equipment to reach the area or just to move around where it's needed. But rescuers still using simple hand tools or to break through the debris or just bare hands in order to find and preserve more bodies at this point. Now, even bikers with motocross bikes are helping to reach places that cars or trucks cannot reach.
Now, is there any information whatsoever that helps people understand how many more people could be missing?
Well, it's hard to tell because Amatrice has 2,500 inhabitants, but all the most affected towns are usually sparsely populated but have been swelled by tourists visiting for summer, making estimates for the precise number quite difficult. So, honestly, it's going to be tense.
Now, at this point, do you get the sense that most people fear that the chances of finding anybody alive are very slim?
Probably, yes. Hopes to find survivors are becoming very narrow. As we were listening, rescuers know that people can be pulled from debris even 3 days or more after an earthquake. But we can see how the town of Amatrice is ruined, and so actually it would be a sort of a miracle to find someone still alive.
And indeed, a miracle. We just hope we can see more of those miracles. Giovanni, thank you very much for your reporting.
Thank you.
That's Giovanni Sorrentino reporting live via Skype from Rome in Italy. Now, Somali security forces say they have ended a deadly siege of a beachfront restaurant in the capital, with at least 7 people killed in the attack, along with 2 assailants, a police official said Friday. Mogadishu's police chief, Colonel Bashar, said the attack ended just before dawn Friday. He said security forces rescued most of the civilians stranded inside the restaurant. The attack started Thursday night when a car bomb went off near Banadir Beach restaurant, followed by a gun battle. Al-Shabaab militants quickly claimed the responsibility for the attack. Colonel Bashar said 7 people were killed during the attack, including 5 civilians and 2 security personnel. He said 2 assailants were also killed. Now, security forces say they have arrested another militant involved in the attack. The area along Mogadishu's Lido Beach has many new restaurants and upmarket establishments popular with business people and people from the diaspora. Going further south, Zimbabwean police on Friday fired tear gas at the opposition leaders and hundreds of demonstrators as the protest against President Robert Mugabe descended into one of the worst outbreaks of violence in 2 decades. Opposition head Morgan Tsvangirai and former Vice President Joyce Mujuru had to flee the rally in their cars, while protesters ran for cover as police firing tear gas and water cannons broke up the core of the demonstration. Clashes then spread through the streets of Harare as riot police fought running battles with protesters who hurled rocks at officers, set tires ablaze, and burned a popular market to the ground in some of the worst unrest since food riots in 1998. Mugabe, 92, has led Zimbabwe since independence from Britain in 1980. Now, for some perspective, Dewa Mavinga of the Human Rights Watch joins me live via phone from Johannesburg, South Africa. Good evening, Mr. Mavinga.
Good evening, Vincent. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and now, every time we see protests in Zimbabwe, we see violence. Are there legal, authorized protests that ever take place in Zimbabwe?
Well, that is the problem, that the protests today in Zimbabwe were cleared by the High Court. So these were legal protests. These were peaceful protests initially. But the police, in their attempt to crush the protests, actually instigated and incited violence. So this is why it will be difficult to get peaceful protests, because the police themselves are acting outside the law. There is a collapse in the rule of law in Zimbabwe because the police refused to take the High Court order that gave the political parties, the authority to have their constitutional right to march and call for reform.
Now, what was the main reason for today's protests?
Today's protest brought together, 18 opposition political parties who are calling for national electoral reform ahead of elections. You would know that one of the major problems in Zimbabwe is of an uneven electoral field and electoral laws that favor Mugabe and ZANU-PF, and therefore these opposition political parties are calling for reforms to ensure that there is an environment that is conducive for the holding of credible, free and fair elections, and national elections are due in 2018.
Now, is there any indication whatsoever that Robert Mugabe's government will cave in to this demand?
So far, the response from government has been arrogant and heavy-handed police deployment. So it's an indicator that they are not prepared to cave in. But what we are witnessing is an increasing number of protests and increasing resilience on the part of citizens. So it is only a matter of time, I believe, before the government caves in to pressure from citizens. Because for the first time, we had sustained demonstrations of weeks and months, and people seem to be saying in unanimity, enough is enough. And therefore, the only way for forward for Mugabe and the ZANU-PF party is to engage and get into dialogue with citizens.
Okay. Mr. Mavinga, thank you very much for your perspectives. That's Doa Mavinga of Human Rights Watch speaking to us from Johannesburg in South Africa. Now, with only 2.5 months before the presidential election, Democratic and Republican candidates are appealing to minorities for support. Donald Trump is addressing African Americans in an effort to turn them against rival Hillary Clinton, who enjoys most of their support, as Laritza Hoke reports.
In the past week, Trump has been promising to ensure better education and employment for African Americans and to revive the declining inner cities where many of them live. At a rally in Manchester, New Hampshire Thursday, he blamed the Democrats for failing U.S. minorities.
This is the year that the people who have been betrayed by Democratic policies, including millions and millions of African American and Hispanic American citizens, reject the politicians who have failed them over and over and over.
The minority voters largely reject Trump, but some are willing to give him a chance.
Because we need jobs. The net worth of black families in this country is less than $5,000. It is true that over 58% of African Americans are unemployed in some urban cities. Not all of us. Obviously, he's not talking to all black people, but there's a large percentage of us who are not doing good.
The Republican candidate also is courting Hispanic voters. He still vows to build a wall along the U.S. border with Mexico, but has backed off from his erstwhile promise to deport millions of illegal immigrants. Trump has called Clinton a liar and a co-founder of terrorism. He also is accusing her of corruption.
Access and favors were sold for cash. It's called pay for play. Over and over and over, people who donated to the Clinton Foundation or who gave money to Bill Clinton got favorable treatment from Hillary Clinton's State Department.
Clinton had planned to talk about boosting small businesses during a speech in Reno, Nevada, but instead she focused on Trump's record on minorities.
In just this past week, under the guise of outreach to African Americans, Trump has stood up in front of largely white audiences and described black communities in such insulting and ignorant terms. Poverty, rejection, horrible education, no housing, no homes, no ownership, crime at levels nobody has seen. Right now, he said, you can walk down the street and get shot.
Clinton has accused Trump of helping small hate groups and the radical fringe take over the Republican Party.
His disregard for the values that make our country great is profoundly dangerous.
The Democratic candidate also contends that Trump is too ignorant and too unpredictable to be trusted with leadership at a time of political crisis. Laritza Hoke, VOA News, Washington.
Well, Janet Yellen, chairwoman of the Federal Reserve System of the United States, delivered her all-important speech this morning. Jill Malandrino, business correspondent in New York, explains how a change in monetary policy impacts global markets and local economies in Africa.
Good evening from the NASDAQ markets. As we can see, all three major averages in the U.S. are upticking to just over 0.5% as Federal Reserve President Janet Yellen is making her all-important speech at Jackson Hole, Wyoming this morning. Markets are reacting off of this because they're trying to gain some clues into will we get an interest rate hike in 2016, particularly the September meeting on the 21st. Now, from a global perspective, should central bankers and markets around the world just sit back and watch and see? This is going to be widely watched because these speeches are analyzed in depth and the headlines can and move the markets, as you can see right now as we uptick over here, particularly the financial sector and commodities, because they are sensitive to swings in the U.S. dollar. Now, globally, the federal funds target rate of 25 to 50 basis points has forced Europe and Japan into negative rate territory to try to weaken their currencies against the U.S. dollar and improve their competitiveness. But let's take a look at it from a local perspective on the continent, from a developing economy, just like we see in Nigeria. Again, I tend to talk about Nigeria the most because it is the largest African economy and dependent on that crude oil price. And it's also having issues with the Naira trading at record low levels against the dollar. Those two components are why we could see a potential recession in Nigeria. So the majority of basic goods sold in Nigeria are imported from overseas. Therefore, as the Naira continues to free fall, the wholesalers and retailers of goods will have to adjust their prices of their products upwards to reflect the amount being paid for these goods since they are paid in dollars. The basic definition of inflation. It also makes borrowing more difficult. So the near-term catalyst for the Naira is going to be the Federal Reserve in the U.S. raising interest rates in 2016, because if it should, that would move the dollar higher. An increasing dollar could make Nigerian imports more expensive and further impact the Naira. It's not just a Nigerian economy. A lot of economies on the continent import their goods and services, and this does get passed down to the consumer. So this is something that we're going to be monitoring for the September meeting and going forward for the rest of the year. From the NASDAQ market site in Times Square, New York, I'm Jill Malandrino for Africa 54.
Well, thanks a lot, Jill. Now, we want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54, and check out all headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Find me on Twitter at VOA Vince Makori. Coming up, immigrants help immigrants adapt to a new life in a new country. Stay with us.
I wanted to present music and a side of American culture that is most important to me, that is a part of who I am. They're going to get some incredible performances. That's one of the things I love, bringing these artists in so you can get to see them do what they do. It's soul music, and that's what music is. It's that which comes from the soul.
Welcome back. Now, as the political debates rages on over U.S. immigration policy, those who are already in the United States have faced numerous challenges trying to find their way in a new culture. As VOA's Linda Ring discovered, the help immigrants give to each other is often the most effective. VOA's Carol Pearson narrates.
Bella, Mommy's here. Hi, Isaac.
Nigerian immigrant Mariam Oyetunji is a single mother of twins. Now 13 months old, Isabel and Isaac are clearly the center of a household filled with love.
I'm so glad I had them. They're very healthy. They're very strong. They are my everything.
But Mariam was not always this relaxed about motherhood. Her unexpected pregnancy, a less than enthusiastic partner, and a very traditional African family left her in need of support.
Our culture is to live with your parents until you get married. So my situation with getting pregnant and not married, it was looked down upon. I needed to find something, somewhere, somebody who can help me. Because I personally did not know how to help myself.
She found help at Mary's Center, a nonprofit health organization serving people in the greater Washington, D.C. area, including people from more than 100 countries. Over 60% immigrants, the staff is a reflection of the people they serve. Janani Ramachandran grew up in India, a background she says helps her help others navigate a sometimes unfriendly system.
There are are biases in the healthcare system, in the mental health system of Western medicine not respecting different cultural approaches. And I see that in the way, as I mentioned, I'm from India. I see that in the way Indians sometimes can perceive this, as well as other cultures in my work here, how African immigrants, Latino immigrants can perceive some cultural insensitivity.
Mary's Center began in 1988 as a basement prenatal clinic for Latin American women who had nowhere to turn. Today, with an operating budget of over $40 million, it serves tens of thousands of people in 7 locations. Founder Maria Gomez came to America as a child, escaping violence in Colombia. At a White House ceremony, she explained why she established the center.
And I received so much from the American people. I received so much from this country, and it was so easy for me, and it was my duty to actually give back to community.
In 2013, she was awarded a Presidential Citizens Medal from President Barack Obama.
Today, we honor you. We celebrate you, and most of all, we have a chance to say thank you.
Her impact is felt every day. When Janani recently visited her client Mariam, she could see what a difference she's made. And after more than a year of keeping this young mother on track, the rewards are personal.
I look at her like a sister. I really do.
I'm really happy for you.
Thank you so much.
For producer Linda Ring, I'm Carol Pearson, VOA News.
Well, it's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54. Art from all over the world at your fingertips. We'll be right back.
And I'd like to thank you. I am not persuaded that there are reasonable prospects of success on appeal.
Welcome back. Now, one of the greatest achievements of the internet, the possibility of visiting interesting places using a computer or a smartphone has been enhanced greatly with the advent of virtual reality technology. An app designed by the New York City-based startup Wolfbert aims to open virtual doors to world-renowned art galleries. Now, VOA's George Puttage reports.
Many people have visited remote places by internet through sites such as Google Earth and photos on websites. But visits using virtual reality technology is the next best thing to being actually there. This is the experience a company named Wolfbert wants to bring to anyone anywhere who is interested in art, says its co-founder, Elizabeth Reed. She spoke to VOA via Skype.
As we now say quite casually, but we genuinely mean it, democratizing access to these incredible treasures and then teaching through it.
Right now, users can visit 6 art museums, such as London's Courtauld Gallery and its famous collection of Impressionist art. Many others are in the works. Viewers explore the virtual space by moving their head in any direction. Dropping their head calls up a virtual iPad with additional commands.
We are standing before Edouard Manet's last major work.
Virtual visitors can also enter the animated artwork to get additional information. Wolfbert's app works with all popular virtual reality goggles and smartphones. Later, the galleries will be connected so viewers can easily step from one into another.
Conceivably, you could visit the British Museum within Wolfbird, and then maybe also go to the Natural History Museum in London or New York or in DC and connect those.
Exhibition places are taped with special high-resolution cameras.
The real magic occurs with our engineering team, who gets all this massive amount of data and really blends it and stitches it together to give us as realistic a feel, something that is not simulated.
For now, the app is free, but when the number of galleries grows, Wolfbird plans to start charging a nominal fee. New content is to be expected every 6 to 8 weeks. George Putich, VOA News, Washington.
Well, as we end our show today, we leave you with Shehi Sodimu. He's a Nigerian Afro soul artist, and this is the remix of his hit single, Love Me JJ, featuring American R&B sensation K. Michelle. Good night from all of us here in Washington.
What's your name? Say what? Love me, Jeje, love me tender. Don't mess around, not a great pretender. Bad boy from Nigeria, the baddest bomber in this area. Blow my mind with the way you walking. You blow my mind with the way you talking. Oh, stop, 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 stop.
Every day I think of you.
Love me, Jeje, love me tender.
Every night I dream of you.
Love me, Jeje, love me tender.
My sugar, my honey, my tender lover.
My sugar, my honey, my tender lover.
Yeah, say you love me, I stay forever.
You say you love me, I stay forever.
Every day I think of you.
Love me, Jeje, love me tender.
Every night I dream of you.
Love me, Jeje, love me tender.
Every day I think of you.
Love me, Jeje, love me tender.
Every night I dream of you.
Love me, Jeje, love me tender. African woman with a pretty face, slow and steady, wins this race. Beautiful girl, you know it, beautiful girl. Come make we talk, pick you up around 8 o'clock. Give me good love, you give me ecstasy. I give you good love, I be your fantasy. Oh, I love the way you walk, I no go lie. I love the way you talk, I no go lie. And me, I shower, never. Temperature rising, you give me fever. New York, Lagos, even London. Anywhere you go, you got it going on.
Every day I think of you.
Love me, Jeje, love me tender.
Every night I dream of you.
Love me, Jeje, love me tender.
Every day I think of you.
Love me, Jeje, love me tender.
Every night I dream of you.
Love me, Jeje, love me tender.
Every day I think of you.
Love me, Jeje, love me tender.
Every night I dream of you.
Love me, Jeje, love me tender.
Every day I think of you.
Jeje, love me tender.
Every night I dream of you.
Love me, Jeje, love me tender.
Baby, 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 always on my mind. My tender lover, the one of a kind. I feel so special since you came into my life. I'm gonna love you for the rest of my life. My days are brighter, all because of you. My dreams are sweeter because I dream of you. My problems vanish, all because of you. Everything I do for you. Every day I think of you.
Love me, Jeje, love me tender.
Every night I dream of you.
Love me, Jeje, love me tender.
barnaamijka qubanaha waxa aanu bilownay bishii julaay ee sannadkii hore waxaana hadafku yahay inaannu dadka u gudbinno barnaamijyo muuqaal ah annaga oo hiigsanaynaa tv
qubanaha v o a waxaan ku soo gudbinnaa qubanayaal goosgoos ah oo xiise badan oo ku saabsan arrimaha soomaaliya maraykanka iyo caalamkaba
haddaba qubanaha v o e da kala soco websaytekeenna voa somali com